Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting of the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board on the 19th of March, 2025. I would like to call our special board meeting to order, seeing quorum in the room. And I would also like to acknowledge that our meeting this evening is taking place on the unceded and unsurrendered ancestral homelands of the Algonquin Nation. And I thank the Algonquin people for their enduring stewardship of these lands and for sharing with us the many Indigenous teachings and knowledge about the land and how to care for it and care for each other. Do we have a mover for approval of the agenda? Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Is there a seconder for that? Trustee Dixon, thank you. Is there any discussion on the agenda? And seeing none, I'll call the question for approval of the agenda. All those in favor? And opposed? The motion is carried. In accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, does any board member have an interest to declare? And I am seeing none. So I would now like to move on to the presentation by the Alternative Schools Advisory Committee. And I would like to call on the representatives of the Advisory Committee to come forward. Welcome. It's Emily Addison and Carolyn Webb.
Yes, can you hear me all right?
We can indeed. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. I hope we'll be able to have the timer up on the screen just to help you out. And there will be an opportunity for some questions from trustees following.
Great.
So please begin when you're ready.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. Of course, my name is Emily and this is Carolyn, and we are the co-chairs of the ASAC. As an advisory committee to you, the trustees, we are here to provide you some advice about the alternative program. The director and his team have presented you with one proposal to introduce a singular model of learning with 2 language tracks, causing a massive system-wide change. No options, no costing, no psychological risk assessments, no pilot projects. Changes, moreover, that involve the phasing out of an incredibly innovative and valuable program that has even greater potential, the alternative schools. Senior staff have said publicly that their proposal could have mistakes and there will likely be some changes. Our committee is letting you know today that one of the mistakes is the proposed cut to the alternative program. We have been meeting with many of you to discuss the current proposal and to share early thoughts about different options that are possible. Thank you so very much for being open and listening and considering our ideas. We are asking that you continue to have open minds over the next weeks and hopefully months. Look for creative options, opportunities, and improvements. Families throughout Ottawa deserve careful consideration when making such a fundamental change in elementary education. Remember, this is one plan. What is in front of you now doesn't need to be the plan, not in terms of boundaries, but also not in terms of program changes that are irreversible. So let's talk about our alternative program. Our alternative program provides an inquiry-based, student-driven education model that aligns with proven best practices in modern education. It serves as an option for families who are looking for a different approach to public education than what is offered in the mainstream. At the very same time, it serves as a lifeline for students who do not thrive in traditional classrooms. And through the 7 alternative tenets, the program fosters strong community ties, relationship building, mentorship, and leadership development that go well beyond the standardized test course. I could go on. And let's just point out that there are many examples of publicly funded alternative schools within Ontario and across Canada. Right here within Ottawa, the French Public Board and the French Catholic Board have multiple elementary schools that are founded on alternative pedagogies. TDSB has 19 elementary alternative schools. There are publicly funded alternative schools through parts of Quebec, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. And also, the OCDSB has many of what we could call alternatives at the high school level. Canterbury Arts, High School Gifted Program, the alternate program, co-ops for students who want to engage in real-world learning, and so much more. We seem to understand that older children don't all thrive in one learning environment and that they have different learning needs. This is the same for our younger learners too. They don't all fit one mold. So let's talk about equity for a moment. The current proposal is for all students to be in one single program design in either of two language tracks. That is about equal access. That is not equity. Instead, equity is about working towards every student being able to access the learning model that best supports their engagement and success. Now is the time to point out that by percentage, the alternative program serves 4 times as many students with special education needs than French immersion, and 2 times the English core program. Alternative schools also serve 2 times as many students in low SES backgrounds than French immersion. Our analysis and the letters that you have been receiving from families show that these marginalized students are having their needs met and are thriving through the alternative program. If this is cut, where will these children go? The answer, they will be forced back into a system that for many has already proven to have failed them. And let's be clear, the cut will not affect wealthy families who are able to pay for private school or move neighborhoods. This cancellation hurts students whose families do not have economic means to otherwise access what their children need. Now let's talk about the achievement for a moment. Using OCDSB's own measures, some have argued that the alternative schools have lower EQAO scores. Let's examine that claim. The ministry's own data, as well as international peer-reviewed studies, have shown that special learning needs or being from low SES backgrounds negatively impacts attendance at school and academics of students of success due to a variety of systematic barriers and inequalities. We will be sending you a memo this evening that goes into some detail about this data. But let's just highlight, alternative schools serve more higher proportions of students with learning challenges, socioeconomic barriers, and neurodiversities, and they are still performing as well or better than the English with core French program. This is not a failing program. This is indeed a success story. So far, we've highlighted how the alternative program serves marginalized students, but let me make absolutely clear, this is not a program for disadvantaged students only. Far from it. And that is the beauty and the magic of the elementary alternative program. Families like mine, like Carolyn's, and like so many others have deliberately chosen this path right from the start of our children's educational journey because the 7 alternative tenets, the school culture, and the unique learning experience reflects the values that we want to instill in our children. What we have in our alternative schools is something very special, a diverse community of learners thriving academically, socially, and emotionally, reaching their potential in ways that for many are not possible in a more mainstream school environment. And yet despite this, for over 10 years, the OCDSB has done almost nothing to promote or communicate about this program to the broader community. Without effective communication, French immersion becomes the automatic choice, not because it's the best fit, but because it's the only choice people know about. Time and time again, we hear families say, I wish I had known about this program earlier. This shouldn't be happening. It's as if the alternative program is OCDSB's best kept secret. Some may ask, if the alternative model is so great, why not expand it to all elementary schools? The simple answer is this is not technically or practically possible, and it's not what all families in the OCDSB want. Here are just a few examples of what we mean. One of the 7 alternative tenets is integrated curriculum. Subjects are woven together seamlessly. Right now, the vast majority of grade 1 to 6 alternative school classes have one teacher for most of the day, aside from prep period, of course. This is not just beneficial for building relationships, trust, and classroom community, but allows teachers to truly integrate learning across subjects throughout the day. Under the board's proposed new model, the 60-40 split will change everything. Students will be shifting between teachers for large portions of the day, sometimes different classrooms, and not only that, but to reduce program siloing, senior staff are recommending that students from French immersion and English programs mix for 40% of the day. How can a teacher integrate curriculum when not only are they only teaching some of the subjects, but students aren't even in the same cohorts throughout the day? The reality is, this proposal's a new structure is completely at odds with a number of the alternative tenets. Another fundamental reason why elementary alternative education cannot simply be expanded is that it's not all what families want for their children. For instance, the alternative program fosters a non-competitive learning culture. This isn't just about classroom teaching, it's embedded in everything we do. For example, in our alternative sports tournaments, every student can participate. And instead of playing school against school, students from all alternative schools are mixed together to form teams. We don't keep score, and the emphasis is on collaboration, effort, and fun rather than competition. We also don't have science fair competitions, we don't hand out awards, and we don't use traditional grading in the same way as other schools. This is a pedagogically sound practice well backed by research, and for many students, this approach is a game changer. It removes pressure, allows them to thrive, and fosters a love of learning without a fear of failure. But let's be honest, this model isn't for everyone. Some students benefit from more competitive environment, and many families prefer a grade-focused academic structure. That's why having a different educational pathway is important. One size doesn't fit all, and trying to fit the alternative model into every school would erase what makes it unique and effective. Here's my last point. So, as an advisory committee, what is ASAC's advice to you? We urge you to listen, not just to ASAC, but to the voices of the alternative school community and to your own strategic plan consultation report. Right now, our feedback is not reflected in the model that's being proposed by staff. In fact, some of the EPR reports misrepresent our feedback. Our recommendation to the Board of Trustees is to maintain the alternative program, promote it, and make it a model of excellence that this district can be proud of. It won't take much, and we are here to help. We've been here before. In 2010, staff recommended cutting this program, but trustees made the right choice. They voted to preserve it because they understood then, as they should now, that the alternative education serves a vital role in this district. The proposed cut to this program is fundamentally flawed and is not grounded in evidence-based research. It lacks clear financial analysis. It does not reflect the voices heard in the consultation process, and it fails to provide a compelling and transparent rationale. If you are going to consider eliminating the program, then at the very least, engage in a thorough and meaningful consultation that aligns with PARG and the TRC calls to action. Indigenous communities must be consulted on education decisions that impact them. Ensure transparency and accountability. For instance, we're still waiting on critical data from staff. Allow for meaningful community input. Senior staff had months to create this plan. The community has had just a few weeks to respond. We ask you, before making a decision that will impact thousands of future students and families, to take the time to get this right. There are better options. All children do not learn in the same way or in the same environment, but all children have the right to a meaningful education. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And we do have some questions from trustees on this, beginning with Trustee Presley.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, and by the way, if you could keep your response to about a minute, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. First of all, thank you very much to Emily and Carolyn for representing the ASAC families. Early on in your presentation, you said that you have different options that would be available or different options for the EPR. How can trustees engage with you in order to learn more about these options that ASAC has come up with?
Sure. We have been talking individually with a few of you on some of those very initial ideas. We would love to hear from you how the process is that we can share those. I think an informal discussion where we could have a bit more of a back and forth would be great, because this kind of meeting is so formal that it's hard to be like, through you, that kind of thing. But we really, truly want to sit down with you and talk through some options that we think make this program viable, and we'll let it shine and be like a real beacon for our board.
Thank you very much. I would love to have a meeting if any other trustees are interested in that. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks.
Next question is from Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can I get a thumbs up?
If you could turn your volume up a little bit, it would be easier.
Great. So my question today is whether or not there are tenants that could be adopted by the mainstream, that given that this is the best kept secret, can you expose it and let us know what we could do within the mainstream proposal? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that is a conversation for another time. We have mentioned a few of these before, and we're committed. I think if this program remains, there are lots of practices that our community could highlight. But as we've said before, this is a whole school model, and the tenants are interwoven together to really create a very unique school culture that you can't really separate out. It's a whole experience for our children. Do you want to?
Sure. One of the other things that alternative programs have that's unique is the majority of parents have chosen to go to send their children to school. The schools, some are in the catchment, like our student. They live right around the school and they would be going there anyway. But that is a part of it, is that parents bring those values to the school community, and it's kind of one of those things where it's really difficult to envision how it would work if parents didn't hold those similar values. So,
yeah.
thanks.
And if I can just follow up on that, if you can imagine the item on non-competition, that's one of the foundational pieces of our program. How would that work in a school where there are lots of parents who value competition and kids who are driven by competition? Like, it's a cultural disagreement in a way.
Thank you for that. And Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
There we go. Sorry. Through you, Chair. You referred to alternative schools as a lifeline for students, and I don't disagree. I know through my own experience as a parent that can be true. But we also know that the reason that there's disproportionate representation of low socioeconomic students with learning disabilities, neurodiverse students, and marginalized students is because they were actually discouraged from remaining in the mainstream system. And we are proposing here that every student should be able to thrive. I understand your arguments, but can you imagine a way in which, if we didn't have this alternative option, we would be able to then require that educators and schools and our district support students of all sorts to thrive in the mainstream?
Sure. Don't you already require all your educators to be able to support the learners that come into their class? That is what educators are supposed to do right now. And it's not happening. And that will continue to happen even if you get rid of this program. That's not going to change. Changing teacher practice, I worked in teacher education for 10 years. Changing teacher practice takes a hell of a lot of work. And some people aren't going to change their practice very quickly at all, if ever. So to assume that you can just say, oh, let's cancel the alternative program, and all of a sudden, within 2 or 3 years, the schools will be safe spaces for these learners that got pushed out and felt completely disengaged with their learning and unsafe, that is actually just not practically possible.
Just the comment that it's not likely, the fact that there's an alternative, that the schools are practicing the way they are. I don't think that removing that alternative will change the practices of the school themselves. So one of the thoughts is we would actually really celebrate if all schools were to take on more of these practices and become more like the community that we know. And the question is whether it could be one of those things where as the rest of the school system adopts more of the practices, can we reevaluate in 5 years or 10 years and say, is there a need for the alternative program anymore? Thank you.
Thank you for your answers to our questions. I am not seeing any additional questions for you this evening, and your presentation is very much appreciated. And moving on now to item 6 on our agenda, our delegations. Before we begin, I would like, first of all, to welcome all of the delegates to our meeting space, knowing that all of you have important comments to make regarding the program model and the boundary changes that our staff have put forward for our elementary programming across the district. Each delegation that has been given a speaking spot will have 3 minutes to speak. And I ask that you please stay within your allocated time and speak directly into the microphone so everybody can hear you. You've all been provided with our expectations for respectful and constructive presentations consistent with the principles of the OCDSB Code of Conduct and Human Rights Policy and with the Ontario Human Rights Code. You must refrain from using offensive or defamatory language and from making negative or derogatory personal references about trustees or staff or others. You may not misuse information, personal information that relates to OCDSB students, staff, or trustees. You may not engage in debate with other delegates or staff or board members. Any delegations engaging in any behavior that is disruptive to the meeting or violating the behavioral expectations of which you've been informed may have their delegations stopped by me as chair and may be removed from the meeting. I would ask that you please stick to the presentation you've prepared and refrain from commenting on the content of other delegations. At the end of your presentation, up to 3 trustees may have questions of clarification for you. If there's something you've said that they haven't heard properly or that was unclear as to your meaning, you will each have 1 minute to up to 1 minute to respond to each question. If no one asks a question of you, please take that as a compliment because your presentation was clear and fully heard and understood. We will be listening closely to all of your presentations, and we will also be reading carefully through all of the written presentations because we value the time and effort that you've made to prepare your presentations, and for those of you who are here in person, to come this evening to share your views on the elementary program review. Finally, I will ask also that those present please refrain from applause, cheering, or booing during our meeting. This is not a concert or a sports event. It is an opportunity for every delegation to be heard with our full attention and no distractions. Thank you very much for keeping those ideas in mind. And now, moving on with the agenda regarding our elementary alternative programs, I would like to call trustees' attention to the 2 written delegations that have been provided, one from Mars Witchman Young and one from student Miles White, which are there in your package, and I trust that all trustees have read them and will consider their content. Moving on then to item 6.2 regarding special education programs. This evening we have 3 oral delegations, and I would like now to call upon Guillaume Cote to please come forward to the podium. You have 3 minutes to make your presentation, followed by the possible up to 3 questions. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Guillaume, and I'm here on behalf of my daughter, disabled daughter, Tessa, who, if she were here, she'd try to give you all the biggest hug of your life. And it'd be really, really cute until it was time to actually focus a little more, because this is not the right setting for her. She needs adapted setting, and she needs special class. The proposal in its current form worries me on 2 main aspects: safety and community building, and financial implications. Now, a lot of great things have already been said about the former, so I'd like to focus on the financial implications for the family affected right now. I've been working in finance for 15 years, but I think it only takes 15 minutes to understand that families with disabled kids have an inherently greater financial burden. And I believe that the current proposal would only add to that. The best way to describe Tessa is she's a 2-year-old in the body of a 4-year-old. And given that, I think it's easy to see how disruptive Tessa would be if she was attending regular class, even with a full-time EA. Now, we're very, very fortunate right now. Tessa goes to kindergarten at CHIO school. But prior to CHIO, we were offered an alternate schedule for Tessa. With the current proposal, there was a strong possibility that Tessa and a lot of kids like her will fall under similar arrangements. Now, alternate schedule, what does that mean? It means that Tessa was offered a spot in a regular class for half days or until she gets too dysregulated that they'd have to call us and we'd have to go get her. But what that also means is that at best, one parent has to work half the time. And not a lot of employers would accept that. I don't think it takes a finance degree to imagine how so much harder your daily lives would be with 25 to 50% less family income. I hope that you consider all of the impacts of the current proposal when you submit your vote. Thank you very much for your time. That's all I have for today.
And please don't go away too fast because there may be some questions for you. Trustee Presley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you, Guillaume. Thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned additional financial pressures to those who have children with special education needs. Can you clarify what some of those may be?
Countless OT sessions, physical, PT, OT, speech language therapy, you name it. Our weekly schedule is driven by all the appointments we have to make sure that she gets the best care possible. You're welcome.
And Trustee Kaplan-Meier.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for speaking. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the suggestion that Tessa go to school only part-time, was that a suggestion that she would be in a mainstream classroom in kindergarten and not have any other supports? She didn't qualify for any other programs. I ask because if she qualified for the CHIO school, I imagine she might have also qualified for some of our other programs.
I don't remember all the details. I think it was more of a resourcing allocation thing. I think from memory, and I apologize if I missed some of the details here, but an EA would be made available to her for only half days because of resource constraints. So for the other half of the day, we were kind of stranded.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you.
And our next delegation this evening is from Sonia Elliott. If you could please come forward, and when you're ready, go ahead.
Sorry. You can hear me okay? Okay. I'm going to read from my laptop, so forgive my face being down. My name is Sonia Elliott, and I'm the proud mother of a student in the general learning program. I stand before you tonight to urge you to reject the proposed cuts to the primary special needs program, the general learning program, and other critical special education classes as proposed in the elementary program review. The EPR talks about bringing students to services, community schooling, and re-envisioning how special education is delivered. But how will students receive the support they need if the closure of these 39 SPCs is approved? The current proposal lacks clear answers to these questions. There's no structure, staffing plan, or cost analysis comparing the cost of keeping these classrooms open versus spreading these supports across hundreds of schools. Without a solid plan, we are asking teachers, students, and parents to take a leap of faith with no safety net. We're also asking trustees to vote on an idea and not a plan. Success looks different for every child. My son Travis is in grade 8, but he works at a grade 3 or 4 level. He needs daily practice, direct instruction, and extra processing time, support traditional classrooms can't provide. Cutting GLP and PSM programs removes this crucial support, making it harder for students like Travis to build foundational skills. These programs offer the tailored environment that sets them up for success. I know this because Travis has lived it. Diagnosed with autism, ADHD, anxiety, and a learning disability, he struggled in mainstream classrooms. His teacher, despite her best efforts, didn't have the resources to support him. By grade 3, he was drowning. His only completed work by November was a single colored page of a pumpkin. GLP changed everything. Travis found a place where he could learn at his own pace, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged. He said to me, "Mom, there's other autistic kids like me. I'm not the only one." Today, Travis is engaged. He's making friends and experiencing academic success. He's gone from a student who couldn't function in a classroom, who was bullied, and who called himself dumb, to a confident student surrounded by peers who understand him. He's learning social skills and life skills with other kids like him, kids who share his quirky interests and truly get him. Community and friendship for a special needs child are not built on geography alone. They are built on understanding and they are built on connection. SPCs provide that. They create environments where students don't just exist alongside their peers, they truly belong. Travis is just one of hundreds of students who rely on these programs. Without GLP, he would still be lost. I urge you to look beyond the numbers, the reviews, and proposals and see the faces of the children who will be affected by this decision. I ask that you reject the proposal for the closure of these 39 classes, not just for my son, but for every student who deserves the same opportunity to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Elliott? And I'm not seeing any hands raised, which says you must have done a very good job of being clear.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Moving on then to 6.2C. Unfortunately, Michelle Parker, who would also be speaking about special education programming, was unable to attend this evening. However, we will make sure that we follow up with her written presentation. The next group of delegations will also be oral delegations. And these relate to, or this next one relates to French as a second language. I would like to invite Christina Leperle to come forward on behalf of Canadian Parents for French. Welcome.
You hear me?
We can, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Good evening, valued trustees and guests. As Canadian Parents for French, we urge you to pause and consider this. Does the French immersion recommendations improve student proficiency and achievement in French? We applaud the recommendation to expand early French immersion program to more schools. This will remove barriers to access. We are cautiously optimistic that this will increase participation and improve French proficiency outcomes for more students. The recommendation to cancel middle French immersion in favor of rolling admissions of early French immersion through grades 1, 2, and 3 is a little unusual. It may contribute in a very limited way to increasing participation in early French immersion and to improving French proficiency outcomes. However, this potential benefit is overshadowed by our concern that grade 4 students will no longer have an entry point to immersion, thereby reducing overall access. We are also concerned that already strained primary early French immersion teachers will now have the added challenge of teaching students who may enter immersion in grade 2 or 3 with no French or minimal French compared to their peers. The recommendation to reduce intensity from 80% to 60% in grade 1 further weakens the delivery model that was adopted by the board for early French immersion in 2016. It also does not align with decades of research and evidence on how to best achieve French proficiency. Leading Canadian researchers and academics and experts in second language acquisition have consistently identified effective pedagogy and 3 design principles that maximize proficiency outcomes in French immersion programs. First is an early start. Second is cumulative time in French. And the third is intensity. Intensity means front loading of the program with 100% instructional time in French during the early years. That is total or full immersion. We are here to amplify the parents' voices from the September consultation report. French immersion parents emphasized the importance of bilingualism for their children's futures. They called for increased French immersion, French instructional time, better support within, and strengthening of the French immersion program. Please pause and consider the reduction in intensity proposed for the French immersion program and the loss of access for grade 4 students. We ask you to prioritize evidence-based design and listen to parents who rightfully expect OCDSB to meet their goals for French proficiency by improving French immersion program quality and accessibility. We thank you for the work that you do for the OCDSB students and community.
And thank you very much for your delegation. Do we have questions? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through your chair. So I appreciate what you're saying in terms of an early start and time in French and intensity. Are we not actually addressing all of those issues by ensuring that more of our students will be able to access French immersion by letting them join French immersion in grades 1, 2, and 3, where right now, if they miss those, they actually have to wait until grade 4, and our most marginalized populations don't have any access to French immersion because it isn't in their schools?
As I stated in the delegation, part of the concern is that when you have one teacher who is addressing the multiple levels within the classroom, it becomes challenging to provide a certain quality of program because you have to ensure that all students in the classroom are able to understand the instructions and the assignments and everything else. So if you have students who come in at a later date but have a lower proficiency, it's going to require an adjusted teaching plan, which is challenging, first of all. Second of all, many of the students, we know now that we have a 50-50 French-English bilingual model in kindergarten, we know that parents who want to make the choice to take French will usually take it earlier. And I was present at many of the listening sessions in the spring, and what we were hearing was that parents wanted to have access if they came into the Ottawa area after grade 1. So keeping a grade 4 immersion entry will still keep that option for them. The difference is that when all students start in grade 4 or start in grade 1, then the course and the language is adjusted to the learner's needs. Whereas if you have a rolling entry, then it becomes a little bit more challenging because you need to ensure that even the students with the lowest levels of proficiency can also participate in the class.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your delegation. I am not seeing any other hands raised to ask questions, but we very much appreciate your participation in
very
the
much.
process.
Thank you.
Moving on, then, we have a number of delegations relating to attendance boundaries. And I should explain that when we planned the agenda, what I was trying to do was to group as much as possible delegations that were related to roughly the same area, typically a group of schools where often changes at one school were affecting one of the other schools in the group, or schools that were close neighbors of each other. And so I arbitrarily adopted cluster names, which do not always reflect all of the names of the schools involved, but it was a matter of trying to sort out the list in a relatively small amount of time. So our first cluster I called the Rockcliffe Park cluster. It does not only involve Rockcliffe Park Public School, and we are about to hear from Jessica Strauss, and you have 3 minutes for your delegation.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and trustees and guests. I'm honored to be here today. I'm Jessica Strauss, and I have 2 children at Rockcliffe Park Public School. I do a lot of community work. I've served as the treasurer for my children's daycare, which was at Andrew Fleck on George Street, where I lived in the Byward Market for 15 years. I served as the treasurer for the Franco Jeunesse Parent Council, which is in the CPO board when my children were there. And I've served as the treasurer for the Ingenium Foundation, which represents the 3 national museums in Ottawa. I come to you with an offer to help, and I think there's been a very ambitious work plan that you and your colleagues have put out. The ambition can't be understated across all of the zones that you represent, the many schools and the thousands of students. What I would suggest and what I ask you to consider is what a phased approach would look like to this. Something that actually speaks to a lot of what you're hearing today and from the needs of the students. I think a test case might be helpful in considering some of the reboundarying and rezoning and the programs that you're proposing. Specific to RPPS, on February 3rd, we held an very insightful town hall with Trustee Evans, and wanted to thank Trustee Evans for helping us to learn how we can enable some of the changes that you're proposing and what we might be able to do together to achieve the objectives of the OCDSB. The objectives that I'm referring to have to do with community-based approaches. So thinking about what students need within the communities that they're in, whether they're in that zone or for the programs, thinking about English and French needs, and also thinking about minimizing transitions that students face. We are talking about a cohort of students that through the pandemic had a series of very unfortunate transitions from provincial closures, homeschooling, so much was thrown at them. I appreciate that you've done a tremendous amount of work to get to where we are. It's landing with parents in a way that you're hearing, and for me, I will speak for myself, is causing some shocks to the system and applying some kind of grace with how we can help you to help us and our students to move forward would I think be hugely appreciated. Our PPS finds itself in a really interesting situation. As you know, the status quo is that the school ends at grade 6. At that point, 97% of students leave OCDSB. Typically, a small handful go 4 kilometers away to Queen Elizabeth. Oh, I'm really out of time. We have had existing infrastructure, capital infrastructure investments made in the last few years through the renovation of an existing police station, which really gives us a unique opportunity to expand to grades 7 and 8 at this time, even with our existing population of students without considering the reboundarying. So my proposal today is that we expand our PPS to grades 7 and 8, effective as immediately as we can, using our capital infrastructure and with a modest operations and maintenance budget request that we think is appropriate, and happy to work with you on that. So I stand before you tonight to make that request. Thank you.
Thank you very much for offering a suggestion. Are there any questions for Ms. Strauss? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Can I just ask you to clarify, what did you mean by a phased approach and what did you mean by community-based approaches?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Kaplan-Murth. So in a phased approach right now, we understand that there are parents who are considering already leaving the board. A phased approach would seek to retain as many families as we can in OCDSB rather than losing them to the private schools in the neighborhood or to CPO. So this would take, I imagine, a couple of years to consider how we retain those families that are due to be leaving the board and what that would look like for the OCDSB. In terms of, sorry, your second question was on community? based?
Yeah, I was just asking what do you mean by community-based approaches?
Yeah, so we have some natural divides that happen, most significantly represented by what is Celeron Boulevard. And for our students who are leaving grade 6, then would be going to Queen Elizabeth, crossing that divide is actually really difficult for children who are 11 years old. It's not reasonable to think that children would be able to move themselves 4 kilometers, thereby putting an undue onus burden on parents whose day would be severely compromised if they have to move their children 4 kilometers over a major thoroughfare.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Strauss? And I'm seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And in this group of delegations, I would like to call your attention also to item 6.4B in your agenda, a written delegation from Ms. Tara Doherty regarding Rockcliffe Park, and a delegation on behalf of the Rockcliffe Park Public School Council from Joanne Lynch, also a written delegation. Moving on then, item 6.5 relates to the cars on the Rideau cluster of schools. And I'd like to invite Ms. Kayla Fernet to come forward to speak.
Good evening. My name is Kayla Fernet, and I am a parent of 2 young children at Cars on the Rideau and a resident of North Gower. I'm here on behalf of hundreds of parents in the Rideau area to express our concerns. Our 2 villages, Cars and North Gower, are 7 kilometers apart, separated by the Highway 416 in the rural south end of Ottawa, and are fast-growing destinations for young families. In our community, the board's proposal worsens utilization, increases inefficiencies, underuses existing facilities, requires costly retrofits, and creates unnecessary upheaval for our children, our families, our educators, and our community without clear benefits. Cars is a K-8 school with 633 students. The school completed a 25,000 square foot addition in 2011, including a purpose-built primary wing with 5 dedicated kindergarten classrooms and ample outdoor space for expansion. North Gower feeds into Cars and has a much smaller footprint with only 2 dedicated kinder rooms and the remainder of their classrooms on the 2nd floor, with insufficient space for the incoming cohort. Due to the physical constraints of the property, it has very limited space for expansion or portables. Under this proposal, North Gower will become a K-3 dual stream, absorbing over 200 primary students from Cars, and its enrollment will skyrocket from 122 to over 290 students, pushing its capacity from 46 to 108%. Notably, the incoming kinder students become over 40% of the school's demographic, nearly equivalent to the current population of the school. Meanwhile, Cars becomes a 4-8, losing 308 students, dropping from an 85 to a 44% capacity, and leaving its purpose-built primary wing underutilized. Transportation costs will likely increase as a result of this plan, as all K-3 students that are in Cars now will now require busing to North Gower, and almost all North Gower students will still need to be bused due to rural road safety. Our community overwhelmingly opposes this proposal, with 73.4% of our parents surveyed indicating they will consider leaving the board if this is implemented due to the logistical and financial hardship it will create for our families and the increased transition impact will have on our children. The current proposal's one-size-fits-all approach does not take into account our rural realities, our program enrollment realities, or our feeding patterns. Within the constraints of the park, a better option is the status quo. Leave the school single-tracked. North Gower should maintain a K-6 English program, Cars a K-6 EFI with 7-8 dual stream, and this will put both schools within manageable capacity. It does not waste existing resources, avoids costly retrofits, and prevents overcapacity capable of growth to meet the community's needs. Equity means finding solutions that fit the needs of a community, not equality across all communities. As you navigate such monumental change, we urge you to pause, consider our proposals, work with our communities to implement a sustainable, effective solution that meets our needs for the years ahead. Let's get this right the first time. Our kids deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have trustee Lyra who has a question.
Thanks. You said that 74% of the families that you had surveyed were opposed to this change. How many families did you manage to survey? What kind of N are you working with?
Yeah, so we have a group of almost 183 people on a Facebook page that we've gathered as advocates. There was over, right now, but I believe over 67 families that provided answers to this survey form that we circulated, including indicating the impacts and personal implications this will have on their families. And one of the questions we included was that. So I believe it was about 68 people.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Of the children who currently go to North Gower and the children who currently go to CARS, what percentage in each school currently bus to school?
I would say in each school, the percentage of busing is about 95 to 98%. I would have to look at the numbers, but the walk areas of particularly North Gower are extremely small. I actually live down the street from the North Gower Public School, and even if my children do end up there, they will still need to be bused due to the lack of sidewalks past the school on our street, and as will every other child south of the school on the street.
Okay,
Just
so
to add on the OSTA map for North Gower, if you look at the 1.6 kilometer walking range, only about 20% of it is safe, and the rest involves traversing country roads that aren't possible for walking. So that is the reason that there is significant busing even within the 1.6 kilometer walking zone.
okay, so either way, children are busing.
Either way, children are busing. However, CARS does have a larger walk zone due to being sort of in the village proper and actually having sidewalks surrounding the school and a suburban neighborhood right behind it, whereas North Gower is on more of a secondary road.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm seeing no additional questions. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, trustees.
Moving on then, the next delegations, we have a group of these relating to what I have called the Woodroffe cluster, which actually touches on DeRoy Kennedy and Regina and Churchill, and I start losing track after that of how many different, and Severn probably. I start losing track of how many schools in that group. So I'd like to welcome Elizabeth McDonald to the podium, and you have 3 minutes for your delegation. I know the last couple have gone a bit over, so please try not to. Thank you.
I represent a group of parents deeply concerned about the changes proposed for Woodroffe Avenue Public School. We do respect the goals of the review, but in Carlingwood and Wood Park, the proposed changes directly oppose the stated aims by dismantling community schools and moving students much further from home. Our model, thriving K-8 school in our diverse, mixed demographic neighborhood would be torn apart. For my family, this means we'll no longer have a 5-minute walk to school. Instead, my 4-year-old will travel nearly 3 kilometers to a school at 124% capacity, despite there being, and get this, 4 under-capacity OCDSB schools closer to my home. My 2 children will attend 2 different schools in completely different neighborhoods. Woodroffe and Regina students, along with Severn, Pinecrest, and Agincourt families, will face the longest and most dangerous commutes in all urban zones, crossing major arteries, including, as I'm sure you're all now aware, the 417. Equity of access to programming, while important, is not the same thing as addressing broader equity issues. Equity involves removing barriers without creating new ones. These changes will disenfranchise as many people as they potentially empower, and they will disproportionately impact mothers and low-income families. You, through this decision, will drive women out of the workforce. This process seems designed to limit true engagement and expedite implementation. There are entire communities that don't speak English, don't know this is happening, and face tremendous barriers to participating in this inequitable engagement process. We have significant concerns about the lack of transparency in this plan and the lengths to which the board has gone to avoid triggering a PAR. I am a registered occupational therapist. I have experience working in schools. I am very concerned about the plan to abandon the K-8 model and introduce unnecessary transitions. My daughter would change schools 3 times by grade 4. While she is indeed resilient, she shouldn't have to be. We call upon the board to respect past board decisions and the robust evidence showing that students do worse when they attend middle schools. I am deeply concerned about the impact on children with disabilities and learning differences. Inclusion at all costs without adequate funding, training, and supports leads to exclusion, leads to abandonment, leads to willful neglect. We acknowledge this is complex. We are willing to participate in sensible change, and we have shared with each of you a proposed amendment to address the unacceptable safety issues for the 6 schools in our area. Our knowledge of our communities will make it possible for us to find solutions together. Please let us help you. We call upon the board to make public any viability assessments of any proposed amendments. Please prioritize transparency so that you may fulfill your responsibility under the Education Act to uphold public confidence in your decisions. Thank you.
And thank you for your presentation. I do have a couple of questions for you, beginning with Trustee Lyra.
There we go. So you claimed it was the longest, most dangerous travel in the urban area. How did you make that determination?
Father in our community of parents who has looked at every single map and mapped out every single commute and looked at the major arteries crossed and looked at the danger of crossing an 8-lane highway. I don't think you can argue against crossing an 8-lane highway as being the most dangerous commute in this city.
Thank you.
And the next delegation, Trustee Presley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your presentation. You mentioned that you had a proposed amendment for us. Would this be the beautiful 1-pager that was created by some of the members of the Woodroffe community?
It absolutely would be, thanks to our wonderful neighbor, Marissa. I have hard copies for everyone here today that I would love to pass out if I am allowed to cross this beautiful line, and we'd be happy to meet with any of you to talk about it. We have done the work. We have brilliant families who have done the math. We have found all of the data we can possibly find. We want to help you make this work. We deeply believe we can do it together if we simply take the time and focus on the transparency that is required to do this in a community way. Let's do it together. You've got some brilliant parents ready to help you do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have a question from Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So you mentioned that our process of consultation disadvantaged marginalized populations. When you created your alternative proposal, how did you engage with those same marginalized populations?
Great. So many of you are likely aware that there is a large WhatsApp group with over 400 families in that. We have been reaching out to families from the 6 interconnected schools in our area. We have been using our own personal networks. We have reached out through existing trustees. We have reached out through existing parent council contacts. It is extraordinarily important to Woodroffe families that this is not about Woodroffe alone. This is about making sure this makes sense for all 6 interconnected schools in our area. This is not a selfish proposal. This is a proposal that we think can work for all of us. We are especially concerned about our Severn and Pinecrest and Agincourt neighbors, who, while not in our community, we care deeply about. We need to make sure that this proposal keeps their kids safe.
I'm not sure that you answered my question. How do you know that you reached the marginalized populations?
We have not reached the marginalized populations because the principals of those schools where the families primarily speak Arabic and Pashto have not yet translated the materials for this elementary program review. And while I do appreciate that there are Arabic and Pashto language booklets on your website, they are labeled in English. They are hidden deep down on the page where you can't possibly find them if you do not speak English. That is why we are urging you to slow down and focus on equity in engagement. We know Pinecrest families are not at the table. We are doing our best to use our voices, our platform, our privilege, and our influence to make sure they are not forgotten, but they are not here. Look around at the number of white women speaking today. That tells you all you need to know.
Thank you for your presentation. And just to correct a little piece of information there, yes, there are translations available in a variety of other languages, and our family and community engagement team has been busy working with some of the schools where language is a significant barrier to make sure we do gather their input to this process. So thank you for that. And if a member of our staff, perhaps if you could go to the edge of the barrier and they can collect the materials you brought for us. And then we also have, in association with the Woodroffe cluster of schools, a delegation in writing from Ms. Emily Crow and another written delegation from Hillary Jensen, which are in your agenda package here. And with that, we will move on to the Bayview Sawmill Creek cluster. And I think when we have finished that delegation, we will take a brief recess so that everybody can stand up and wiggle and get a stretch. So moving on, next delegation would be Ms. Lisa Chamney. Oh, this one is by Zoom. So have we got the connection?
Hello? Hello?
Ms. Chamney, can you see and hear us?
Yes, can you see and hear me?
We certainly can, and I'm hopeful that there's a timer somewhere that you can see as well. You have 3 minutes for your delegation, so please begin when you're ready.
All right, thank you for hearing me. I'm from a small neighborhood called Windsor Park Village in Zone 11, just north of the airport. I'm asking that you please keep our neighborhood in the existing Bayview and Fieldment catchment area and not send us way over east to Sawmill Creek and Roberto Bondar. I'm asking this on behalf of at least 26 families in our small neighborhood who have signed a petition to this effect. Airport Parkway and the Transitway are a huge natural barrier to the east of us. The survey and trustees have already heard from me and other parents about the safety issue of our children trying to bike past the Airport Parkway on off ramps. You've also heard how impossible it will be for the numerous carless families in our neighborhood to take 2 city buses and navigate the South Keys Transit Station for after-work childcare pickup or for extracurriculars. Right now, the city bus routes connect us directly to Fielding, Bayview, and the community center childcare. Today, I'm mostly going to talk numbers because that seems to be clearly what this is about. So for context, there are no new children coming into the Bayview Fielding School family. There's no new development happening in the Bayview area. Overall, you are just proposing to take us away. But for grades 4 to 8, everyone agrees it would be better for your numbers to keep us at Fielding. Fielding's projected to have only 71% enrollment versus Sawmill's 83% and Bondar's 80%. So this is just about K to 3. According to your proposal, Bayview will shrink in 3 different ways. It will lose grade 4 to Fielding. Fine, that makes sense to us. It will transfer a large portion of its catchment to General Vanier. It's a net transfer of children away from Bayview. So Bayview will still shrink even if you keep us there. But what the capacity numbers on your papers don't take into account is that Bayview has 2 gyms for a K to 3 school, and it has a large amount of outdoor space. And it has already been handling the high enrollment numbers just fine. So in this case, your goal of community-based education, for us, it's worth keeping a couple of the portables. OCDSB themselves have already considered our particular boundary when the Elizabeth Park School closed just a few years ago. They determined we are part of the Bayview community. The Catholic school boards and OC Transpo clearly agree. If you take one look at a satellite image, you will see how we are a continuation of the McCarthy Road neighborhood. Right now, it only takes me 10 minutes to take a single bus to pick up my kids from the community center childcare program. The same amount of time it takes the teenagers in our neighborhood to bus there and work there. I have a neighbor whose kids are able to walk or bike to school when they miss the school bus. I have another neighbor with 3 young kids and no car, but who is still able to make it to the movie nights because it's so local. So please, I'm asking you to go ahead and reduce the numbers by 2 of those 3 ways, but to keep our community-based education. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Chamney? Trustee Lyra.
Could you send either your trustee or the whole board a map? Because I'm not familiar with the streets that you have articulated. I would think it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I had attached a map in, but I have a better quality one I could send. I've already sent it to the trustee, but if there's a way I could send it to the whole board, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions for Ms. Chamney? And I am not seeing any, so we will watch for the map. And thank you again for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
And with that, it is now 7:42 p.m. We will have a recess of 10 minutes so that people can stand up and move around a little bit and stretch. And we will be back at 7:53. Thank you very much. So I'd like to call our meeting back to order. And moving on with our agenda. The next group of delegations relates to what I called the Broadview cluster. And that again touches several other schools around. Our first delegation here is from Laura D'Angelo. And you have 3 minutes, and thank you for being here. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you for having me. I'm Laura D'Angelo. I'm a mom of 2. Finley is 4 years old. He's a JK at Broadview, and Estelle just turned a year. Already, almost every week, Finley asks when she will join him at Broadview. Quite frankly, I do not have the heart to tell him that the school board responsible for their education is going to split them up. I'm here today because the boundary changes that are proposed in the elementary program review will split some families between 2 schools where the same grades are offered at both schools. Families are being split up into different schools all across the city as a result of the review. But the sibling split happening at Broadview, Churchill, Hilson, Hopewell, Lady Evelyn, and a number of other schools is an unintended change that can easily be resolved. As an elected board, you can fix this. Parents can help. Under the new boundaries, my children are zoned for Churchill. Even though Churchill and Broadview will offer the same grades that my children will be in, at the same time, both schools will offer JK to grade 6 and JK to grade 8 respectively. The only way that they will be able to attend the same school is if I pull Finley out of French immersion at Broadview, a school he is thriving at, and enroll him in the alternative program that you are proposing cutting. Either scenario is harmful to my children and my family, either ripping my child out of the school and the community he is entrenched in, or separating him and his sibling for a decade, for the entirety of their elementary education, due to an unintended consequence of a deeply problematic review. This is unilaterally cruel. I urge you to consider the impact on families. There are 2 separate drop-off times, 2 separate pickup times. There is no before and after care at one school, but there is at another. Frankly, we all know that parents build school communities. They build relationships with educators, with administration, with parents of other children, and with your children's friends. There is only 2 ways that this can happen for most families who have 2 parents in their household. They split those responsibilities in half, thus splitting their family even deeper as they build 2 different communities. Or, frankly, one of them leaves the workforce, which, let's be real, is going to be the mom, assuming that it is a mother and father family. On March 17th, at the community consultation, Director of Education Pino Buffone suggested to my partner that this particular issue, where all grades are offered at both schools, but due to the phase-in and phase-out of programs, siblings will be forced to go to different schools, was not an intentional choice made during the boundary change process. You can fix this. As an elected board, you can decide to make the logical and compassionate decision that in exceptional cases like these schools, siblings can go to the same school when their separation is unintended and easily fixable. In September of 2026, all of these schools I mentioned will be under capacity. And instead of using that space to keep households together, that space will sit empty while our children's communities and our families are ripped apart. I urge you as an elected board, make the easy fix to keep siblings together in schools where that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. D'Angelo? And I am not seeing any hands raised, so I think you must have been very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is from Briar House. That was changed to a written delegation. And I would call trustees' attention to that one. And the third one, which is item 6.8C in our agenda, is by, and I hope I don't mangle your name, Adwail Tiwari. And if I've got it wrong, please correct us.
That's perfect.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and trustees. Good evening to all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Today, I want to focus on one and only one issue. The plan forces siblings to attend different schools. I have a 6-year-old boy who goes to Broadview in grade 1, and I have a 2-year-old daughter who will be going to JK next fall 2026. And according to the plan, she will have to go to Churchill, which is in the opposite direction. And so my son will be going to Broadview in one direction, and my daughter will be going to Churchill in the other direction. That means, as was mentioned earlier, 2 different drop-offs at potentially 2 different start times, 2 different pickups at ostensibly 2 different pickup times, dealing with 2 different school administrations, 2 different communities, 2 different sets of parents. And I can't even fathom how single parents would manage this quagmire. I was talking to a neighbor last night, and her husband is in the army, and he gets posted. And she has no idea how she'll manage. 1 drop-off was hard on her when her husband was posted, and now it'll be 2. And unfortunately, she has not been very active in the consultation process because she has a very demanding job as well. And as for my daughter, after grade 6, she will be forced to bus to Fisher, which is 3 kilometers, while there's Broadview, which is a 5-minute walk away. I do not believe that this aspect of the plan is efficient or effective, or indeed intended. I also want to flag that details on the boundary changes were released just over about a month ago. And therefore, parents are taking the time, a lot of time in the spare time, in evenings and weekends, early mornings, looking at different facets of this plan. As for my concerns about splitting up and ripping apart siblings and ensuring that they never attend the same school throughout their entire school education, I offer 3 points for consideration. Number 1, please provide an exemption for siblings to ensure they can attend the same school. Number 2, please make reasonable boundary changes. In my opinion, it is not effective, efficient that somebody needs to bus 3 kilometers when there is a school a 5-minute walk away. That to me is not keeping kids in the community. And finally, I urge all of you, Madam Chair and the trustees, to please delay voting on this proposal. The details were released very recently, so that the myriad concerns raised by parents can be addressed, not just mine, but the various aspects that have been flagged tonight and during the written submissions. As well, I urge you to kindly release details on the gender-based assessment, as well as detailed costings of this plan. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions for Mr. Tawari? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just wondering if you could just clarify, what did you mean by the gender-based?
Madam, thank you, Trustee, for that question. What I mean is, I would be interested to see how the board perceives that the 2 drop-offs in this situation. How would that impact different genders? How would that impact? That's all I meant.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from trustees for Mr. Tawari? And I'm not seeing any. Thank you again for your presentation this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And the next group of schools that we will be hearing about is what I have called the Knoxdale cluster, which also includes Manordale and Briar Green. And we begin with delegation by Beth Lawless. Welcome. And you have 3 minutes for your presentation.
Good evening.
Could you get a little closer to the mic, please? Thank you.
I would like to tell you about my son, Max. 8-year-old math whiz, Minecraft master builder, childhood cancer survivor, and victim of horrific bullying on a scale never before seen by the educators who witnessed it. Max is an exceptional dude, identified as being gifted, as well as having PTSD, a fine motor delay, ADHD, and autism. In 2018, when Max was 2 years old, he was diagnosed with leukemia. Getting a cancer diagnosis at any age is devastating, but childhood cancer is especially awful. Max was old enough to see the treatment for the traumatic violation that it was, but too young to understand why it was happening. But what choice did we have but to go to war? And the war against childhood leukemia is long, so long that when Max was ready to start school in September of 2020, he did so under the shadow of both COVID and cancer. It was important to us that Max reclaim some degree of a normal life, so we were excited when we got the go-ahead from his oncologist to attend school in person. Max loved school, but I'm not sure that school loved him. The unprecedented disruptions of COVID were compounded by his frequent trips to CHEO. His teachers made no effort to accommodate him. He had kids he played with, but no friends. But finally, after 3.5 years, Max rang the bell when he was in senior kindergarten. Life was far from certain, but still we were hopeful that it was going to return to some shade of normalcy. But we were very, very wrong. The bullying started in grade 1. On a near daily basis, a group of 6-year-olds targeted Max. He was called names, kicked, punched, pushed down, hit in the face. His glasses were broken. He was beaten with a pylon, spat on, and at one point stabbed with a thumbtack. This occurred in full view of staff. There were up to 5 children involved in the assaults at one time. Despite the measures taken by the school, they could not stop the violence, and so we made the drastic decision to move schools. At the new school, finally, things started to turn around for Max. He made his first friend and was even invited to a birthday party. Gone were the days of Max being excluded. His quirks were embraced and celebrated by his teachers. I know that Max is not an easy child to teach, and the unique matrix of his disabilities continue to impact all aspects of his life, but he's happy and he's succeeding. But now, he will move schools again, to a school twice the size of his current school and further away. It is a school where at least one of his bullies attend. 2 years after that, he will move again for middle school. He will face unnecessary disruption, not because of his needs, but to balance a spreadsheet. He is to be shuffled around without regard for the impact that will have on his social and emotional development. For so many years, I had nightmares about what would happen to Max. I used to wake up sweating, having dreamt of his funeral for the 100th time. I don't have those dreams anymore. There is something supremely unjust in the cards that Max has been dealt in his short life. Do not add to this injustice for the sake of some abstract idea of balance, and keep the Briar-Green boundaries where they are. Thank you.
And thank you for your presentation. Are there questions for Ms. Lawless? And I am not seeing any hands raised. I'm delighted to hear that Max is currently doing really well in his school.
Thank you.
And we will see what the decision brings. Next delegation is from Kristen Philippi, and again, relating to this group of schools. Welcome.
Thank you. I rewrote this completely after Monday's consultations and last night's budget meeting. My original delegation had a lot of good faith information on the costs of the EPR, with my thesis being, how can you tell us that the benefits outweigh the costs if you have no idea what the costs actually are? However, we've now found that the EPR is meant to balance the budget by cutting special education programs and adding more French immersion, which gets a higher per capita funding, never mind that there's already a shortage of French teachers. School boundaries were intentionally gerrymandered, and forced grandparenting in selected schools was designed to avoid triggering mandatory pupil accommodation reviews. So I don't think that me talking about tearing out kindergarten play structures that were paid for by parent fundraising is going to change anyone's mind. I'm in awe of the work done by all of the advocates opposing this review. After our day jobs, and often after our second shifts as parents, we've been reading reports, planning protests, writing letters into the wee hours of the night. The OCDSB has a chance to engage these brilliant, committed people and ask for true, meaningful consultation to see if there are options that you haven't considered yet. We know from your April 2024 letter to Stephen Lecce that the outcome was indeed predetermined, no matter how many times the word equity is thrown around, but you have a chance to make it right. If you're already willing to ignore PAR guidelines and you agree that the budget issues are the provincial government's fault, why not get creative? Work with the other 50 school boards facing deficits to demand better education funding. Advocate to merge the Ontario Public and Catholic school boards, as most other provinces already do. Freeze OCDSB executive salaries instead of granting 20 to 40% raises. Turn underutilized schools into daycare centers and see if the ministry's moratorium on school closures has any teeth. Parents understand how hard it is to balance a budget, but we're also looking at the future. If you go ahead with this plan, slash alternative schools and SPCs, force siblings apart, and blow up communities, what is your plan the next time the province cuts the education budget? And if even a fraction of the parents who said they would enroll their child in another board actually do so, and you lose that funding per student, what will you cut then? Trustees, despite what was said to you last night, you're not just here to rubber stamp whatever the board brings you. I quote, "As elected officials, trustees must balance the demands of the community with the duties required by the Ministry of Education. By law, they are required to consult with parents, students, and supporters of the board on the board's multi-year plan and bring the concerns of these groups to the attention of the board. This can be challenging and takes dedicated leadership, coupled with a willingness to seek innovative ideas and the courage to implement them." End quote. Meaningful consultation with stakeholders is your job. That is what we expect of you, and we will hold you accountable for your vote on April 29th. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this delegate? Trustee Lara.
Thank you. Who are you quoting? Where's the quotation from?
It's from the Ontario Ministry of Education section of the webpage on what a school trustee is.
Okay, thank you.
And are there any other questions from trustees? And I'm seeing none, so thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
delegation.
And am I able to pass out the financial information I discussed?
Excuse me?
Am I able to pass out the financial information I had mentioned?
If you would give it to a member of our staff.
Absolutely.
It
Thank
will
you.
be shared with trustees. And also in this group of delegations, we have a written delegation from Paul Black and another one from Pamela Byrne, one from Amy Thomas, and one from Todd Whitley, which I trust all trustees have reviewed. Moving on then, the next cluster of schools we are hearing about is the cluster which I have called the Pleasant Park cluster, and I would like to call upon Amy Dempsey Raven, please, to come forward. You have 3 minutes. And just go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Pleasant Park Public School is a JK to 6 school with a diverse catchment in Alta Vista. 30% of our kids come from low-income families. Our students speak English, French, Arabic, and Somali. My 9-year-old and 5-year-old girls love their school. Their 3-year-old brother was supposed to join them this September. The board's plan, which purports to create community schools, destroys our existing school community. You've been hearing that a lot, but Pleasant Park is one of the most extreme examples. The plan would turn it into a 4 to 8 with a dramatically different catchment area. Here's what that looks like on a map. The purple is our current boundary, and the green is your proposed boundary. Only a tiny portion of our community remains when all is said and done. Normally, when a change of this magnitude is proposed, school boards are required to do a pupil accommodation review. But here and across the city, the board is using grandfathering to thwart that requirement, to spread the change out over a few years so it doesn't look as dramatic. But it is dramatic. The Alta Vista neighborhood is a case study in why a one-size-fits-all approach won't work. The board should seek to work with communities instead of against them. Many of our families are willing to change schools for a plan that makes sense, one that puts children at walkable schools and keeps siblings together.
There is a way to do this that is less explosive, disruptive, and alienating. Why has the board chosen the nuclear option? At Pleasant Park, 65% of our parents said their kids would be split between 2 different elementary schools. Some would never go to the same school. The K-3, 4-8 model you want to impose on 6 of the 7 schools in Alta Vista takes us backward in time. It will increase busing across our neighborhood, permanently contributing to traffic congestion. It also separates siblings at an age when they still need childcare. Anyone who's a parent knows what this looks like. So this plan is bad for mothers, as others have mentioned, single parents, and low-income families in our community who already struggle to manage one bus that is often late or doesn't come, and one drop-off. It will hurt the most vulnerable. A final point, the sistering of Pleasant Park with Riverview Alternative does not make sense. In 2026, our littlest kids would be separated from their siblings and sent outside our community 3 to 4 kilometers away. We live closer to 6 other OCDSB elementary schools, many of which will be under capacity in your plan. Riverview is 40 to 60 minutes on foot on major roads and around the Ottawa Hospital campus. The only reason our kids are being sent there is because the board needs the numbers to fill the alternative school it wants to close. Parents who have been zoned for this school will change boards. This is not a threat or a bluff. It's just the reality of the community we live in. Trustees, we are counting on you. Many of the major flaws in this plan are fixable. We want to work with you. Please take the time to get it right.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Dempsey-Raven? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through your chair. Thank you. Do we have any idea what percentage of the students in the schools in Alta Vista right now walk versus busing?
Do you?
No?
Do you? I wish we did.
I do not.
We did ask. We know that at our school, we surveyed families, and it's not a scientific survey. We just did a survey. We also are worried that only today did our principal translate the message about the EPR into that he sent out to the school community a couple weeks ago. He managed today to translate that into Arabic and Somali. So we are not sure how many families have filled out the survey from different areas of the city. But the last time I looked at the survey, it was 45% of parents were going to be moving from walking to busing, and 9% were going to be moving from busing to walking. And so the rest of those families, whatever their situation was before, would remain the same. That's just for Pleasant Park. I don't know about the rest of the community.
So 45% switching from walking to busing.
Switching from walking to busing, and 9% from busing to walking.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Dempsey-Raven? And no, so I will say thank you very much.
Thank you.
And especially for bringing the map. Moving on then to item 6.11 regarding what I've called the Severn Pinecrest cluster. I would like to call upon Magdalena Anderchuk, please. And again, welcome. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, director, and fellow delegates. As we reflect upon the program review, I'd like to talk about the importance of community, something that is a core in every thriving school. Growing up in the suburbs of Toronto, I believe that the sense of community could only be found in one place, the neighborhood school. That was my idea until I moved to Ottawa. In Ottawa, I discovered that the true definition of community and neighborhood and what it really meant. My family settled in a wonderful gem of a community called Queensway Terrace North. With its tree-lined streets, its community picnics, its winter fairs, and block parties, we truly discovered what community is, and it doesn't only exist on television. But not like every community, we did have our challenges. One of the main challenges faced in our neighborhood was that the kids were bused to school. At one point, only a dozen or so kids went to the local school of Severn. After the accommodation review back in 2017, Severn has become a French immersion center, starting off with K to 3 and moving up to K to 6. In 2017, we founded our first parent council in many years. I had the privilege of serving as the vice chair and a member of the council ever since. With every movie night, family dance, school picnic, pizza day, exciting activity that we introduced to school, the community was reborn. Over the past 8 years, the families in QTN have stood and we have grown as a community in a thriving place. Friendships have been formed, not just between children, but among parents and caregivers. Severn has become a walking school, and many times you can see parents standing outside drinking coffee and chatting about their day. The students have found a place to belong, a place of friendship, of leadership, and most importantly, a place for home. This year, we are graduating our first JKs from 2017. Many of them are not excited to leave because this is where their home has been for many years, and most importantly, their sense of community. With the proposed changes, I would fear that Severn would lose its sense of community that we have built over the last 8 years. One of the key changes that you have proposed is a split of the K through 3 and the 4 to 8. In theory, great idea. In practice, not so much. Severn has a significant population of families with students that would fit in that spot and would be split, as well as Pinecrest. There would be 2 drop-offs, 2 pickups, and that's just the day-to-day logistical nightmares. What about the long term? Managing 2 schools means that there are Christmas concerts, graduations, field trips, parent-teacher interviews, and events that happen on the same day, such as Remembrance Day. Imagine having 2 children at each school performing. Which one do you go to? One child will be deeply disappointed. Even though the schools are only 2.5 kilometers away, they are not easily accessible unless you have a car. Another key concern with this split is that the leadership, oh my goodness. All right. I have a lot more to say, never mind. I'm not going to speak about the whole transportation because, well, we were on the news about that. But one of the most important things is that what Teresa Kavanaugh said back in 2016 is she never understood why Severn was Severn kids were bussed into the community and all the kids that lived in the community were bussed out. With this proposed change, it's going to happen again.
Thank you very much for
problem.
your delegation. Not always easy speaking in a hurry. And when you're keeping your eye on the time, but you did just great.
Thank you.
And I have a question for you from Trustee Presley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Magdalena, thank you for your
No problem.
presentation. You mentioned about transportation. Can you clarify what you meant about being on the news in regards to transportation?
So a couple of days ago, we had a walk across Pinecrest, how it would look on if the children would have to walk to school. Yes, the kids would get a bus, but we all know that there's a shortage of bus drivers. Buses don't necessarily run on time. And we are going to be one of the communities that every single child, either in grade whatever, pick a grade, will end up on a bus. You'll either end up on a bus K through 3 or you'll end up on a bus 4 to 8. So we are one of the few communities that will have 100% busing between the 2 schools. No problem.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Andrzejczyk? Trustee Kaplan-Meier?
Thank you. Can I just clarify? So what percentage of students right now bus?
So there's 4 buses at Severn, and that is currently everybody who lives. If we're going to look at it, again, I'm still living on Toronto, things of trying to figure. North of Carling, you have to be bused, and Richmond because of the high hazard zones. And Pinecrest, you have to be on the opposite side of Pinecrest, you have to be bused all the way down to Ritchie and all the way down to what would be the old Ottawa border. So it's not necessarily, all the kids that are bused from high hazard zones, traffic zones.
Okay, but you don't know like how that would compare.
So it would compare as in every single student would end up on a bus comparing to we have 4 buses, 120 kids currently are bused at 300 and something at Severn.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not seeing any other hands up. So thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thanks.
And also relating to the Severn and Pinecrest cluster, we have in our package a written delegation from Sarah Sullivan Partridge, to which I would call trustees' attention because it's important for us to make sure we review all of the material that's provided very carefully. Now at item 6.12 on our agenda, we are looking at what I call the Roberto Bondar cluster, which also includes several schools in the surrounding area. And we begin with Natalie Lewis. Welcome. You have 3 minutes. Please begin when you're ready.
Great, thank you. I'm a mother of a 4-year-old in junior kindergarten at Roberto Bondar. My friend Rebecca raised important questions about transparency and accountability at the Brookfield community meeting Monday night. Tonight, I'll reiterate these points on behalf of the parents of Roberto Bondar and all parents in the OCDSB. Where is the empirical data to support this plan? School enrollment data isn't the only relevant data here. Where is the data from targeted consultations with marginalized, low-income, and recent immigrant groups? How can the board justify converting Roberto Bondar, currently a kinder to grade 8, into a grade 7-8 middle school when you yourself recommended closing middle schools in 2017 on the grounds of harmful transitions and negative academic and social outcomes? Where are the impact assessments and risk analyses studying the impact of forced relocation on our young children? Trustees, you are all well aware that a group of CHEO healthcare professionals wrote to you recommending against this change, providing clinical evidence of the psychological damage done by forced relocation of children aged 4 to 8. How can the board justify its hypocrisy regarding child and youth mental health? As we speak, the OCDSB is suing social media giants about harm to youth mental health, while at the same time taking measures that will harm the youngest of our children with impunity to spare themselves bankruptcy. Speaking of harming our children, why is the board cutting specialized programs in alternative schools, disrupting and damaging the security and stability of children who need it the most? Where is your data on the safety of our small children now being forced to cross major streets and highways just to get to school? Shame on you, any trustee, for using your official position to dismiss a mom's concern for the safety of her children by saying that the OCDSB was not liable for the death or injury to her children while crossing major intersections. It is unconscionable that you would use a loophole to get out of the comprehensive pupil accommodation review process to avoid transparency and rigor. Switching our homeschool Roberto Bondar from a K-8 community to a grade 7-8 would obliterate 63% of the school's population, normally triggering a mandatory PAR process. But on Monday, the trustees admitted that the OCDSB has deliberately skirted this requirement by using a loophole. Finally, why hasn't the board considered alternative options to save ailing schools, such as investing in Dunlop, instead of damaging high-performing schools? Let me be very clear. This data doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because the plan is not about equity, well-being, or educational outcomes. As Director Buffoni finally admitted at the Monday meeting, this plan is about the board's $20 million deficit. Board, Director Buffoni, trustees, stop the charade.
I will have to interrupt you there. I said in the original instruction that we would not have derogatory marks about trustees, staff, or others who are present, and I expect you to withdraw those words.
What did I say? I apologize for being derogatory.
With reference to Director Buffoni, or rephrase it differently.
Sure. I mean, there was an admittance on Monday night by staff that there was a $20 million deficit.
That is a fact. That is not the reason for doing this review. And if you would like him to answer that, I'm sure he would.
Sure.
Director?
Through you, Madam Chair, good evening, everyone. I do want to make clear with respect to the budgetary comment, as Chair Scott mentioned, we are in a current annual budgetary process. We do, as an organization, have a $20 million deficit. I want to be crystal clear that the deficit we're talking about is for the upcoming school year, the 2025-2026 school year. We are, by requirement, expected to bring forward a balanced budget each and every school year. The changes proposed for the elementary program review take effect the 2026-2027 school year. And therefore, the two items, although running in parallel, aren't directly aligned. There's no question the program review at the elementary level has budgetary considerations, but has not been a driver of the work that's taking place in the review.
Thank you, Director. So would you please continue with your delegation?
Chair, may I make another point of order?
I'm sorry?
I'm just wondering if we can make a point of order around comments made about medical experts saying that this is forced relocation of children.
I think we
add
can
that as a
raise that
question.
in the
Sure.
questions following. So would you please continue with your delegation at this time? You still have a little bit of time left.
Thank you. Essentially, what we're asking is to delay the vote. Let's all collaborate for a better solution. As an elected board, there's still time to do the right thing. Thank you.
And thank you very much for that. And I'm assuming that Trustee Kaplan-Murth had a question.
Well, I just wanted to for you to clarify, there was not a group of physicians at CHEO who said that forced relocation of young children would have a deleterious effect. And I think it's important, perhaps I could phrase it this way. Are there ever any situations in which children have to switch from one school to another and it wouldn't be considered in your mind a forced relocation?
May I respond?
Yes, please answer. You've got a minute for your answer.
Thank you. Respectfully, there was an email by Dr. Peter Humphreys, the former chair of the neurology department at CHEO, and his colleague, who's the current chair of the neurology department at CHEO, who did write a letter. If it didn't make it to all the trustees, I apologize, and I can have that forwarded to you, absolutely. It does talk about, his words, forced relocation, specifically talking about children aged 4 to 8. His opinion, not mine.
So I just want to clarify for the record that it's not forced relocation and that those notes from those individuals at CHEO were not representative of CHEO or of a medical opinion on the matter.
Thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth, and thank you for your answer. Are there any other questions for Ms. Lewis? And I am seeing none. So again, we appreciate the time that you took to come here tonight and speak to us.
Thank you.
The next delegation that we have here, it relates to the what I call the Castor Valley cluster, which encompasses Castor Valley, Greeley, Metcalfe, and Osgood Public Schools. And this is a written delegation from Shelley Peterson Cannell, who I believe it is a written delegation. So the next group of schools after that, it relates to what I called the Elgin Street cluster, again, which involves multiple schools around it. And I would like to welcome Katie Gibbs for her presentation. You have 3 minutes and begin when you're ready, please.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for giving me some time tonight. I'm a parent of 2 kids at Elgin Street Public School. Under the new proposed boundaries, Elgin is one of many schools that will see their current cohort of kids, their current community, split up and sent off into many different schools. This means that my son, who will be going into grade 5 in 2026, will not only be sent to a different school, but he will be separated from the friends that he's been at school with for the past 6 years. He's also in the cohort of kids who had the first 2 years of his schooling deeply affected by COVID disruptions. Many studies have shown lasting social and academic challenges for this group. So why are we subjecting them to another huge disruption? At the very least, this plan needs to incorporate grandfathering for our current students. Like I think many in our community, we're willing to accept some change and some transition if it means better outcomes for everybody. We support the stated goals of increasing equity, and we also understand the unstated but clear financial challenges that the board is facing. However, this proposal does not provide any evidence on how this new plan will improve equity or improve the financial situation of the board. The public and certainly the trustees have not been provided with enough information to make an informed decision on this plan. I know more detailed reports are coming in April, but that's after the consultation deadline has ended, and that's unacceptable. How many more kids are expected to enroll in French immersion? How will these changes improve test scores for underperforming schools? How much money will these changes save? How will this impact busing? We don't have the answers to any of these questions. How are we supposed to accept this much upheaval without even seeing the evidence of the supposed benefits? My kids aren't in a specialized education program, but I do want to make it clear that I'm appalled by the cuts to the specialized education classes. This shouldn't have to be said, but cutting programs and cutting support staff is doing the absolute opposite of improving equity. When kids are put into classrooms without the supports that they need, it's going to result in worse outcomes for all of our kids. I urge the trustees here tonight to realize that you have been sold a false bill of goods. You have been asked to support a plan without seeing the evidence to back it up, without being given the time or tools to meaningfully consult your community. We keep hearing this is a once-in-a-generation change, but the level of consultation and the implementation planning do not match the scale of change being proposed here. You represent us and our kids to the board, not the other way around. I urge you to delay this plan and demand better for the kids that you all represent. Thank you.
And thank you for your delegation. And I do have a question for you from Trustee Bell.
Good evening. Thank you, Katie, for your delegation and for reaching out consistently over the past couple of weeks. I have many questions, but one that I think is important for public is what sort of consultation would you like to see? It's a question for clarification. Thanks.
Well, we've heard repeatedly that the core is one of the communities that is most impacted, and yet there has not been a single in-person consultation in the core. In your zone, there has not been a single in-person consultation. I think what we've heard here tonight is that when you're proposing big changes to community boundaries, there has to be community level consultation. Centertown is not the same as Cars. All of these communities have very unique characteristics that cannot be taken into account from a board-wide plan. And we haven't seen any of that happen, certainly in our zone, but we're hearing that that hasn't happened anywhere across the board.
Thank you, Katie, for that. I'll definitely touch base with you after. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bell, and thank you. I have a question from Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. I was wondering, have there been any suggestions? I know that there have been in other areas, and actually, Capital doesn't even kind of come up on this list, but has there been any suggestion of a town hall for anybody in downtown Ottawa that you know of?
Well, I know that our school council has organized 2 meetings on our own. We did invite our trustee. She was unable to attend them. So we have held those on our own. We have also taken it upon ourselves to make a 1-pager outlining these changes and sending them, paying with our own parent council funds to print these, send them home in everyone's backpacks. Because as many people have said tonight, we're very concerned that there's many people in our communities who are not even aware of these changes, much less this short consultation window. So we're already doing what we can as a parent council to get this information out, but frankly, that's not our job. The scale of consultation, 1 month is not enough time to consult communities on changes at this scale.
Sorry, I wasn't suggesting that you would have to organize it. We are doing one for Alta Vista, and invite you to join us if you want to. It's as downtown as we've gotten so far, but I can speak to you if you'd like.
I appreciate that. I know that Trustee Bell is organizing one on the 26th, but I do note, again, that is after the consultation deadline, and we have been informed that that it's not going to be an open floor. People are not going to be able to ask questions and share their feedback at that meeting, which is what they're looking for.
Are there any other questions for this delegate? Trustee Presley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Thanks very much, Katie, for your presentation. I've heard you loud and clear that you are saying you feel that there hasn't been enough consultation. If we can clarify, what do you feel would be an adequate timeline for consultation with communities?
You know, it's hard. I do feel like we are being asked to answer a lot of questions that are not our job. There are many people who are professionals in this area, and that's what they do, is run proper consultations. I would assume that the board has some of those people on staff. That is not my job. I don't know what that perfect process would look like, but I certainly know that 1 month of mostly email only distribution of information in a few in-person sessions, none of which are happening in the core, is not enough.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you again for your delegation. We have had 3 questions for this, and that is our limit.
I just wanted to mention there is for Devonshire and Connaught on March 24th. There's one at Broadview on March 26th. There's one at on April 1st I'm sorry, on March 26th, it's at Elgin, and on April 1st, it's at Broadview. And on April 3rd, there'll be a joint Severn and Woodroffe consultation. I'm also in communication with my school councils and so forth. But actually, an interesting fact is I'm also a crossing guard part-time, and I was at Elgin Street this week. And one thing I just happened to speak to parents there about the review. One thing they did tell me was that the school was overcrowded at this time. So obviously this parent wasn't in.
Trustee Nash,
sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry, but I have to cut you off because that really was out of order. Although I'm sure that people appreciate knowing about some of the other meetings in nearby schools. So again, thank you very much. Next delegation also regarding the Elgin Street cluster. Jeffrey Solomon, welcome.
Thank you. Your planners have acknowledged that urban wards like Centertown are disproportionately impacted by this review. As Katie has mentioned, that is unacceptable. Centertown, Hintonburg, and Lower Town are all impacted by this proposal, and there's no downtown consultation. As a Centertown resident, I know what community-based schools are. I live and walk every day my child to school and work. When I first heard about the spirit of this review being community-based schools, I was excited. I was like, great, other people are going to be able to have the same type of advantage I have, spending more time with my family, having better work-life balance, and being more engaged in my actual community that I live in. However, I learned that this plan went astray. I live 2.5 blocks away from Elgin Street Public. Yet under your proposal, I will be going over 1 kilometer away, and my children will almost certainly be bused due to the high traffic concentration on Bronson Avenue they would have to cross. That will be not community-based schools for my definition. So living in Centertown means I get to walk. I get to be more engaged in my activities. I get to walk. I also work on Elgin Street down the road from my school. So when our principal calls me and says, my child's having a bad day, I can go and talk to him and get him to go back to class. I'm about to lose that. Beyond that, our community ties run deep. I've previously sat on the board of directors for the Jack Purcell Recreation Association, which provides affordable after-school care for Elgin Street and Centertown residents. We are at risk of losing that. I will no longer have access to affordable after-school care, as well as there will be employment losses for youth who work in our community. JPRA hires youth to watch our children, and it provides mentorship for these kids when they can look up to older people who are engaged in our community. So what does this mean for families? Friends and groups at Elgin are going to be split across 3 schools. My child will no longer go to the school or a friend across the street because you guys have artificial boundaries put in place along Bank Street and Somerset. These are predefined neighborhoods. You do not understand that based on this review. So I urge the board to take action. Take the time to get this right. Katie has mentioned community-based consultation. That's working with the communities and people who actually live there. Grandfather all current students to Elgin and do a phased-in approach over multiple years. You guys are talking about a seismic change. Take the time, get this right, and do a phased-in approach. It'll help you and us. Our children will have the continuity. You'll have the time to make these changes to schools over many years. And ensure that siblings can stay with their brothers and sisters. Lastly, stop using major boundaries like Bronson through a middle of a proposed school zone. It's dangerous and unacceptable. It also shows that whoever did the plan does not understand the neighborhood. And don't use artificial boundaries like Bank Street to divide us. We are a united community. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your delegation. Are there any questions for this delegate? Trustee Lyra.
Thanks. I'm a little bit unclear. With one breath, you have said, don't run Bronson or like a major street like Bronson down the middle of a boundary. And with another breath, you said, don't use Bank Street as a boundary. And so I'm a little unclear which of those 2 positions you want us to take.
Sure. So under the proposed plan, Cambridge Street Public School will be where my child goes. I live on Bank and James. My child is comfortable with Bank Street, and there's a lot of community crossings. Bronson, however, they are not comfortable with. It's a major thoroughfare. It's also one of the most dangerous roads, according to the CAA in the city. Don't put my children down that. I have a 4-year-old. She's in junior kindergarten. I have an 8-year-old in grade 2. They know how to cross Bank Street. We live in that community. That is our zone and our safe space. They walk it every day with me hand in hand. It's also in the exact opposite approach as Bronson, a kilometer in the wrong approach. My office is also on Elgin Street. That allows me to be a good father and stay in their lives. Your approach takes that away. And they're probably going to have to be bused because all of a sudden it's dangerous. Bronson is dangerous.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Trustee Kaplan, is that a hand I see?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. So, sorry, I just wanted to clarify because this isn't my zone. So Cambridge Street, the Elgin splits to Cambridge and which other 2 schools?
Yes. So it's actually 4.
Okay.
Lady Evelyn will become eventually a school under your proposal, as well as some children will stay at Elgin Street. Some will go to Centennial and some will go to Cambridge. So all of a sudden the friend group is split among 4 groups.
Okay. So I'm just wondering why that would destroy community. Just bear with me. As long as children can still walk to those schools, and granted, I understand. I live downtown. I know some of those streets are busy, but why would that destroy community? By the time they get to middle school for Glashan, the kids are all coming from Cambridge, Lady Evans, Centennial, and Elgin.
Their whole world right now is the kids they spend their time with every day. When you say destroying communities, the schools are the heart of that community. So when they don't see their friends every day, that's really destroying their world. So I would argue, along with all the community supports, we're attached, Elgin Street currently is attached to the recreation center. I mentioned Jack Purcell. They have the after-school program. They have the community supports. They have tutoring. They have a swimming pool that they go to. These are the things that are their life and they look forward to every day. They tell me about it on their way home from school. They're going to lose that. Their friends, everything.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't have any more questions for you, Mr. Solomon. Thank you very much for your delegation. And the next group of schools we are hearing about is what I call the Devonshire cluster. And I would like to call on Jessie Cressman Dickinson. And again, you have 3 minutes and begin when you're ready.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay? For over a year, families have been hearing about the elementary program review. We've been told these changes will help more kids access French immersion in their community, a theory we could all get behind. The dream of community-based learning was shattered when families saw the boundary review and found that for many, it actually meant traveling further to access French immersion. As a parent of 3 kids at Connaught Public School, it means traveling more than double the distance and almost walking right past our school to get to the new one. I can't make that make sense. I support the stated intention of the review. I also understand the challenge our board faces with utilization levels in our schools. However, I don't have faith that the plan as presented will deliver on either of these things. The current plan is flawed. First, despite the sweeping scale of these changes, families and other stakeholders only have a month to review the proposal and provide feedback prior to the vote. Second, the proposal doesn't define the problem clearly and transparently that it seeks to solve or provide success metrics. There has been no transparency on how the new boundaries were drawn or confirmation that there will be the staffing and financial resources to support the special education or learners who have thrived in the alternative education model. Families are questioning what success looks like and don't have confidence in successful outcomes as a result. Third, for Connaught specifically, the proposed English and French boundaries differ and therefore go against the stated goal of aligning boundaries. They require many children to travel further to access French immersion, putting some in a position of abandoning the program to stay closer to home. Given these flaws, I'm asking all trustees to say no to the boundary proposal as drafted, and I recommend 3 things. First, that more time is given to enable transparent decision-making and consultation before any vote on approval. Trustees should direct staff to provide a detailed report and plan outlining costs and solutions, because without the evidence, we're moving problems. Families are traveling further to access French immersion, and the board will still have some 30 schools over capacity and more than a dozen underutilized schools. Second, through recommendation 1, the proposed boundaries are redrafted and the plan revisited, keeping more kids in their neighborhoods in the true spirit of community-based education. And we can move forward with certainty that the resources are in place to deliver the educational programming our kids deserve. I encourage you to listen to the voice of parents that don't see the evidence that this plan will deliver and instead are raising legitimate concerns, including degrading learning environments, sibling separation, and the impact this has on kids and parents, as we've heard, primarily moms, safe travel to school, and a complete loss of trust in the board as a result of this rushed process with few details that contradicts the board's commitment to good governance, transparency, and responsible decision-making. And third, if the plan is adopted as presented, grandparenting be an option. For Connaught, the projected utilization factor is 82%. There's ample room for students to stay in their community. Moving kids disrupts education, friendships, social networks, childcare, transportation, and places stress and anxiety on our kids. The plan does do less. It's rushing disruptive changes that don't appear to be offering that don't appear to offer lasting solutions. We don't want a plan that does less better. We need a plan that puts kids first, strengthens communities, and builds trust in the school board.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have questions for this delegation? Trustee Nash.
And thank you. Actually, I was with the Principal Christopher and VP Mayel today, and you're right about the problematic. I don't know if that's the case in your family, but there's one family where their son is.
Trustee Nash, do you have a question?
Yes. Is it you're impacted by the fact that Connaught will only have now the English core, whereas Devonshire will just have French immersion, which means that one child stays at one school, and although Connaught will still have the French immersion, will have to go to Devonshire. Does that impact you?
There are many families within the group of 50 that will impact. That does not impact me personally. We're doubling our distance, and we have to travel further for French immersion. If we choose English, we could stay. And some families in our cohort, the little carve out that's happening with Connaught, we're actually seeing streets split right down the middle. So one side of the street goes to one school, another side of the street goes to another. And I can't think of anything that's more counter to community-based.
Yes, that's Fairmont, I know.
And Parkdale.
Thank you. Are there other questions for this delegate? Trustee Kaplan-Murphy.
Thank you, through you, Chair. And I'm just to be clear, I'm not questioning any of the specifics in terms of all of the stressors. But I'm just wondering, when you say success metrics, I'm curious what would satisfy the community, because as a board of trustees and as a district, we look at success metrics year after year after year, and we've seen the same disparities year after year in terms of programs, in terms of inequalities between schools, and in terms of the children who are most disadvantaged by our current model. So what would be a success metric that the community would accept if we were to, whether we make changes or not? Like,
yeah, so I would say help us understand that problem a little bit more through the consultation process. Present that information at the start of the session, because we don't have a shared understanding of what this problem is. This problem has not been communicated well. It started as, evening out French immersion and giving everybody access to French immersion. It's grown to, we have a pretty serious utilization problem, to we have budget challenges. We need to collectively understand this problem in order to truly engage and provide our feedback.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Are there other questions for this delegate? And I'm seeing none, so thank you again very much for taking the time to come tonight. I would also like to call everyone's attention to the written delegation at 6.15B, which also relates to this group of schools and was provided by Anne Maffrey on behalf of the Devonshire Community Public School Parent Council. The last group of oral delegations that we're hearing tonight relate to a variety of aspects regarding the elementary program review process and potential implementation. And I would like to begin with 6.16A. Kelly Campbell, welcome, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am the mother of two daughters who attend Rockcliffe Park Public School on a cross-boundary transfer granted based on special needs. In April 2024, a letter to the then Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, referenced the elementary program review as a major initiative that could result in transformative change. During this engagement, the review has been repeatedly characterized as a large, complex change management process. And despite knowing the scale of the review in 2024, or since 2024, we have seen no risk analysis nor any evidence of a change management process for this large transformative change that we've been told about. A proper change management plan requires comprehensive data and projections for us all to really understand and mitigate risk. Yet we have seen no such data. At the January 21st Committee of the Whole meeting, several trustees around the table noted that there was an absence of risk assessment in the proposal, and there was a commitment during that meeting to return with an assessment. However, when I attended the March 6th meeting at Gloucester High School and I asked if the risk of removing students from their school would pose issues to their well-being and mental health, and if that had been assessed, the answer was no. As parents, we have identified countless risks to you throughout this process. Tonight, I plan to share a few of these risks, and I would greatly encourage trustees to ask board staff what data is available, what projections have been made, and if and when information will be made public. The risk of achieving your own strategic plan's well-being objective when you disrupt a child's sense of belonging. The risk that the proposed budget cuts that were approved last night, particularly to EAs and other support staffs, will compromise the ability to support all children if you vote to discontinue alternative schools and SPCs. The risk to thousands of children's well-being and mental health when you make children move outside of their normal transitions, which will only be amplified for children in SPC programs who will lose vital specialized supports, and children in the alternative program who will now know that their education model is just too costly to maintain. The risk that without adequate phasing, teachers will be unprepared for this transition. 58% already feel unequipped to handle the classroom mental health needs. The risk that your short-term pain, long-term gain approach will overwhelm a system that is already seeing increased rates of sick leave costing $35.8 million in 22-23. Trustees, this proposal presents significant risks to our children's well-being, the very priority that was identified to the Ministry of Education as being critical. Without data-driven risk analysis, I do not understand how a well-informed decision can be made that will affect the lives of thousands of children. As you have heard tonight, we are united as parents. We ask that you work with us to develop solutions that will truly represent a community-based model, prioritize the well-being of our children and this board. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. Before we go to questions from trustees, I would like to make one correction of fact, and that is the board did not approve any reductions to educational assistants or any other of our non-teacher qualified staff at the meeting last night. What we did approve was a recommendation in accordance with our contractual obligation to our teacher certified staff, which did approve changes potentially. But that recommendation has not yet been given final approval by the board. That will happen at our board meeting next week. Just wanted to be clear, nobody has cut any of the educational assistance yet.
Thank you.
And are there any questions for trustees, by trustees? Trustee Dixon, was that a hand up for a question? And on that, thank you for the list of suggestions, and you must have been very clear. Moving on to our next delegation, I would like to welcome Mr. Trevor Gervais, who is joining us by Zoom this evening. We're just waiting for the image to appear on the screen. Would it be possible for you to turn your camera on even for a moment so we can see that you're really there? And I just saw a little black box pop up. Speak so that we know we can hear you.
Can you hear me first of all?
We can hear you.
Okay.
That's the important part.
Wonderful technical stuff. For some reason, my camera will not start.
Technology is wonderful when it works the way we expect. So glad that you are able to join us, and you have 3 minutes. If you can see a timer on your screen, I don't know whether you can or not, but that will give you an idea of where you are in your presentation. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Will do, thank you. And apologize for the camera, I'm not sure. Technology is a wonderful thing. And first of all, my apologies for not being in person tonight. A little under weather today, but I want to make sure that, that I was here to represent. So I really start with 3 thoughts tonight, and they are simply no budget, no plan B. You know, Mr. Buffoni and his team have their minds made up, but I speak tonight to our trustees across the board. As a trustee, you are here to represent your communities and be their voice. These voices have been loud and clear, and if you've been listening, you've heard the stories, the facts, and the data that do not support these changes. I believe it's time to listen and to act in all of our best interests and the best interests of the city. As a senior vice president at Farm Boy here in Ottawa, I'm responsible for over $30 million in capital expenditures and responsible for all the marketing tactics and budget. And I can tell you that I would never consider spending one penny of that without a solid plan and budget. And you can bet I build in for contingencies. What's this board's plan? What is the budget for the capital expenditures that will be required to retrofit this new configuration? What is your contingency plan in case things go wrong? Mr. Buffoni has said that we would have some costings by April 8th. To who and how accurate will they be? Like the rest of this process, are you just rushing through a budget for the sake of optics? Will they be accurate? And what happens if they're not correct? Who's going to be held accountable? Why have the citizens of Ottawa not been made aware of how much this plan will cost? Where's the transition plan to move kids from the SPCs and alternative programs into mainstream classrooms? How will this transition work when the starting point is a proposal to cut $15 million in educator and support staff? How does that support any type of transition? If enrollment is an issue in the alternative program, I will happily volunteer to lead the marketing efforts, and we'll see what happens when proper care and attention is paid to creating understanding about this incredible program. The letter of April 24th from Ms. Scott to Minister Lecce made it clear that Mr. Buffoni's mandate since day one was to eliminate the alternative program and a number of SPCs and substantially alter existing boundaries. Everything he has done through this process has been with that goal in mind. The reports were built in support of that goal, much of which has been proven wrong, by the way, and the consultation process has been a joke at best. The consultations and surveys were merely to create an illusion of garnering input from the community, when in truth, the decisions were already made and the plan was to ram these changes through. What has become abundantly clear and contrary to what Mr. Buffoni said himself is this whole program review is not about equity. It's always been about money, and no consideration has been given to the impact on these kids. This proposal needs to be voted down enthusiastically. This community is saying no, and we ask the trustees here represent our voices. The future is counting on you. We must continue to provide choices and education to Ottawa families. Thank you.
And thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from Mr. Gervais? And I am not seeing any hands raised in the room, which says you made a very clear presentation and we appreciate it.
Thank you very
so
much. And I apologize again for the technical problems.
Not a problem. Moving on then to our next delegation, I would like to welcome Sarah Smith, also relating to process and implementation issues. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, trustees and staff. My name is Sarah Smith, and I'm here today as a concerned parent regarding the proposed boundary changes. While these changes may be intended to improve the system, they will have significant negative consequences for families like mine and many others in our communities. I urge you to reconsider the impact that this will have on the very families that you serve. Currently, my two elementary-aged daughters will attend the same school, Hopewell, from JK through to grade 8. However, with the changes, my youngest will be removed and placed in a different school in an entirely different direction, splitting our families between two communities. Even our trustee said this must be a computer glitch. We thought an anomaly, but no, we've received no reassurances, only a response of eek, so confusing. This is more than confusing. This is life-altering. Siblings provide emotional security, familiarity, and support. Separating them disrupts their education and well-being, and this decision undermines the very sense of stability that schools should provide. These changes place an unreasonable burden on working parents. Here's what my new day would look like. I'd have to wake up way earlier, get everyone ready, walk 2 kilometers with my youngest and oldest beside me, drop off, walk back with my oldest, and then somehow get her to her school by 9:05. How is anyone supposed to manage a work day with only 4 hours between the last drop off and the first pickup? Right now, my children go to school together at 8:50 and return home together at 4:05. That's reasonable. What you're proposing is not. We are already struggling. This makes our lives so much harder. Families with younger siblings should automatically receive cross-boundary approvals, keeping them together. This is simple. It is possible. Let's make that happen. Does excluding younger siblings reduce transportation needs? No. Families like mine will go from being self-sufficient to requiring transportation in 2 directions. Does this alleviate overcrowding? No. Our school Hopewell's not over capacity, and these details matter. We've heard it's a 1-year pain. No. It's 6 years minimum for my family alone, 6 years of hardship. Will this save families money? Absolutely not. These changes will eliminate crucial supports, disrupt family planning, and impose at least $60,000 in added childcare cost over the 6 years for my family. This burden will prevent us from participating in sports, activities, enrichment opportunities, parent council, school events out the window too. If implemented, it disproportionately disadvantages working moms and in ways that are simply not feasible. I stand before you today as a parent and advocate for all families affected by this decision. I ask you to consider the emotional, physical, and developmental consequences of dividing families, the unnecessary logistical and financial stress being placed on families. Education should support families, not divide them. I urge the board to listen to parents, recognize the real-life impacts, and find a solution that keeps families together. Please grandfather in existing families, draw the line for future families so that they can plan accordingly. We deserve compassionate and thoughtful decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there questions for this delegation? Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned, and thank you for your presentation there. You mentioned an additional $60,000. If you could just clarify that, please.
So under the new plan, there is simply no way that we would be able to, my family would be able to rely on alternative childcare means, which would include my oldest child being of age to be able to walk her younger sibling home from school. So we would have to get, with the schedule that I explained, we would have to get before care for at least one child. We would have to find aftercare for my other child, which we've been able to avoid and forego. Those costs, I've contacted our local childcare providers in the community, would range between $10,000 a year over the span of 6 years, which we would require them. Thank you.
Are there other questions from trustees? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you for your question. I guess my, just for clarification, in terms of grandfathering, because a lot of people have raised that, I guess the question is, how would we then deal with a person who has a third child or a fourth? Like we would constantly be always saying, okay, those families don't have to abide by the boundaries. So I think that we have heard from many people that splitting up siblings is not okay. But I'm just wondering what would be the benefit of grandfathering one group of parents if the next sibling or the next group of parents is still going to be affected?
Well, I don't think families growing should be something that is preventing grandfathering or keeping families together. Families growing is a wonderful thing, and this, if implemented, would prevent growth from my family in particular, but also families need to stay together. So yes, it will catch up. Everyone will catch up. New families to the communities will attend the new schools outlined if that goes forward. It will catch up, and it makes sense to keep families together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this delegate? And I'm not seeing any, so thank you again for taking the time to come here this evening.
Thank you very much.
And And our next presenter is Peter Davidson on behalf of Jody Jane Longley. Welcome.
Thank you. I put this shirt up today because my son asked me to remind us of what we're fighting for. But I need no reminding. Madam Chair, trustees, thank you for taking my delegation tonight. Mr. Buffone, I had so many questions about methodology tonight that I wanted to ask you. I couldn't think of just one. I wanted to ask what the methodology was behind the savings plan, how that was costed, and what the implementation of those savings would be into the resources of schools, of LSTs, of LRTs, of all the SPCs that you're disintegrating and putting into normal schools, of the 5 to 10% of kids within OCDSB that have IEPs or IPRCs that are in that 11,000 that have to transition schools. What is the plan for human resources into that class? Especially when you are planning, I have not cut yet, but are planning to cut EAs next year. 30% salary increase of an executive is an EA's salary, just for reference. What about your infrastructure costs? How are you planning to retrofit 30 schools that are changing from K to 6 to 4 to 8 to 7 to 8? I'm not going to ask those questions tonight because, as I've heard, there is no plan. I could ask about your methodology behind the illogical boundary redrawing when your mantra is community schools. Boundaries that ensure that siblings, like my children, never ever go to the same school. Boundaries that make kids cross the 417. Boundaries that make kids go to 4 schools in 4 years. What is the methodology behind that? But I think I know the answer already. It's to avoid PAR guidelines, because it's alluded to in the letter to Leachy, and we've heard it from principals. We've heard it alluded to from trustees. And so I think I know the answer to that one. And I could also ask about your methodology behind your consultation period. The PAR guidelines say 60 business days from first consultation to last consultation, and yet you're taking 2 months total from boundary release until a vote, with 3 days from when consultations end to when you make a recommendation to the board or the trustees. But I'm not going to ask that question either, because I think I know the answer. The board seems like they're trying to push this through because they think parents won't be focused on it. They think we're not going to listen. Well, parents are focused. The media is focused. Ombudsmen are focused. Elected officials are focused. We are all focused. And so here's the question I am going to ask you, Mr. Buffone. Will you commit to voluntarily starting to follow PAR guidelines? There's a very clear outline of options presented, of costing plans. This is all clear in PAR guidelines. Or will you continue to try to push this plan through and be overwhelmed by the tidal wave of policy that these parents, hundreds and thousands of parents that are gathered here, are going to write to their ministers, write to their elected officials, write to the ombudsman to try to compel you to actually take the due diligence and the governance of this process seriously? This is a yes or no question, Mr. Buffone. Will you start to follow our guidelines?
Thank you for your delegation. And I will ask if there are any questions for you from trustees. And there are no questions.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for your delegation. Thank you for your question. I do want to address some of the elements that you asked, but said I'm not going to ask because I think I know the answer. In terms of savings, part of what this organization has struggled with for a number of years, the better part of a quarter century since the amalgamation of the Carleton Board of Education and the Ottawa Board of Education, is a series of patchwork programs and services that have, in effect, taken the finite resources we have, basically the pie of what we are able to work with. And I understand Even at last night's meeting, there are different interpretations of how big the pie should be, whether there's even a pie at all. But I can be clear to you that I do receive an allotted amount of money each and every school year. Part of the issues we're suffering from with respect to the savings is that we've been allocating our resources inefficiently and ineffectively. Every time you have an additional track, stream, program, it adds up in the end to a number of inefficiencies on staffing, timetabling, transportation, you name it, almost across the system. Part of the streamlining services. Sorry about that. Sorry. That's okay. Part of what we're looking to do here, as difficult as these decision-making processes are, is to streamline what we're offering so that we can do less but do it better and redirect the monies that we have. Not pocketing money, not profiting on money, redirect the monies that we have to serve students more greatly in the classroom. That's not easy, but that's part of the goal. In terms of a transition plan, currently, with our grade configurations, and I don't want to repeat the list of them there, but there are close to a dozen, we have students transitioning each and every school year. We understand and acknowledge that we've got a one-time movement of transition here that is larger than the average, about 4,000 more than we normally do in the 6,000 to 8,000 that we move, give or take. It's approximation, but we're looking at some adjustments, so give or take. That would then stabilize there forward a greater consistency of cohort movement from elementary to secondary. So the notion of kids moving, and I know this is not easy, and I know it's not what a number of parents and guardians want to hear, but it is part of what we do each and every year, each and every school year. In terms of infrastructure costs, lots of concerns about capital planning. What I can say to you, and I don't have the exact detail of which piece of drywall will be up on a school that does need to be renovated, but there does need to be renovations. We do each and every year in the capital plan approximately 30 sites. That's what we're talking about in the one-time move of this plan. We would look at approximately 30 of our sites and make renovations like we do each and every school year. If you need an example, there are reports for the past 25 years of the capital plan that we put forward. What we would be doing is prioritizing these sites, some of them mentioned this evening, for those capital plans. The approximate cost of that will reflect what we've done each and every school year, because at the end of the day, that 30 in its totality, although there's more in some sites than in others, amounts to approximately the same allocation. Those schools would be prioritized in the infrastructural costs for the approximately 30 sites, slightly less, but give or take, that we're looking at on that front. I understand that people are eager for exact details. I get that. What I'm trying to say is that we've mapped out a transition implementation plan. We'll share details of that with the Board of Trustees, but it would represent the nature of our capital planning each and every school year, but we would prioritize in the transition time between a decision and implementation in that year, these sites versus other capital plans that will remain on the list like they do every year. There's more than 30 that we want to work on, but we get to approximately that each and every school year. So I really appreciate the points you raised that you didn't want to ask about, but I did need to comment on them. With respect to our Pupil Accommodation Review Guideline, we as an organization, my staff have followed all the aspects of that and ensured that we haven't gone beyond what's required that triggers a PARG. I understand that people would like various aspects, including, and I'll be frank with you, including now in the context of this conversation, a lift on the moratorium of school closures. It would change the dynamic for us as an organization, but we're working within the parameters that we do have to ensure we're meeting change that we have known we need to do for the better part of a quarter century. I understand the impact across the district is differentiated, and we are looking at areas that I would consider hotspots, so to speak, in tonight's conversation, and our planners are well aware of these sites to see what we can do. We are looking at that right now. But I know that no matter what plan we come up with, it won't be perfect for each and every student. I get that. We're going to do our best to see through a plan that addresses as many of the concerns that have been raised. And as a final comment, I have to share this. I have to share that tonight there aren't 58 parents that were at a site earlier this week in this district that will be going from single track for years and years to dual track. And those parents were absolutely thrilled at the opportunity their kids are now going to have. I understand it's not what we're hearing tonight, but there are multiple perspectives to the plan we're bringing forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director, and thank you very much, Mr. Davidson, for coming this evening. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you turn my microphone on? So thank you. So thank you for that, Mr. Buffoni, and respectfully, I understand that there's a plan.
We're not having a dialogue here. You asked a question of the Director.
Okay.
And the Director has
Well, please make a
provided
plan
response.
and show it to the public before you vote on it. That's what we're asking for, and follow the park guidelines.
We are not going back and forth tonight. You will see the plan when the next report comes out, what is going to be provided. Thank you for coming. That brings us to the end of our main group of delegations, written and oral, that had come in prior to roughly noon on Friday last week. And we also have a number of additional recommendations. I believe we've got a total of 12 right now. 14, sorry. Some of which cover some of the same communities of schools that we have heard about this evening, some of which address process and implementation issues. And I hope that trustees will all take the time to read all of the delegations, because people have put time into this. It's important and we need to be paying attention. That brings us then in our agenda to matters for information. And I don't believe we have any new matters for information this evening. And what else do we have on our agenda? We are actually at the end of the agenda. So that means that having completed our agenda, we stand adjourned. And I would like once again to say how much we appreciate the time that people have spent coming out to our community meetings across the district in several rounds, in sending many emails to us as trustees and to board staff, and to taking part in these delegation evenings and in the meetings that are happening at schools and trustee zones across the district. Your time is valuable and we are listening. Thank you. We are adjourned.